Good morning, Alvin. Thank you.
Good morning. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's a nice sunny day. I think I know what day it is. July 21st.
Yeah, exactly.
2020.
We had men on the moon 51 years ago. We had men on the moon at this time.
So exciting. Yes, a good memory. Very good memory. Good souvenir of those.
I was alive too, so yeah.
Anyway. Me too. Welcome to the St. Louis Press Club's Hour in the Now series. And I'd like, first of all, for you to formally introduce yourself and to cite your position, and I'll say take it away.
Okay. Well, I'm Alvin Reid. I currently am a panelist on KDC Channel 9 on the Nine Network, the most watched locally produced TV show per capita in the United States of America, and that's Donnybrook, of course. Been around a long time, and I'm really honored to be part of that panel. I still write for the St. Louis American weekly sports column, and I do some freelance and contributing and do some radio as well on a couple different stations, including Dave Glover on 97.1 Talk. That's, there's a lot of things I haven't been doing for the last few months, but yeah. So I'm still a journalist. Here we are. Oh, wow. 37 years later after I actually started at the first newspaper I worked at, and I'm still keeping a hand in it.
And you are homegrown. You are from Kirkwood.
I am from Kirkwood. I'm a 1978 graduate of Kirkwood High School. I, left and worked at various newspapers around the country, and I moved back. It was about 19 years later when I moved back to St. Louis and Kirkwood. And they said we always come back, but like I say, this was probably going to be like a stop before my wife and I went someplace else to another newspaper. And lo and behold, at the age of 38, we had our first daughter, and at the age of 40, we had our second daughter, and we lived in Kirkwood, and suddenly we weren't moving anywhere anymore.
And both children in college now, yes?
Yes. I have my youngest daughter, Blaine, will be a sophomore at the University of Missouri. Her parents are both proud Jayhawks, so we had to work that out a little bit. And then my oldest daughter is a senior at Dominican University in Chicago. So hopefully we can get her senior year in without too much tumult, but and she'll probably be going to graduate school, but she's in her senior year and she loves Chicago, and maybe she'll move back in the future like I did, but for now I don't think she's gonna. I think she's gonna stay up Chicago way.
Well, you and your wife must be proud. Also, you mentioned Kirkwood High School. You'll be pleased to know we interviewed Mitch Eden for this series, talking about how he ended from the Kirkwood call and for his oversight of a wonderful treatment of, actually the transfer of being live at school to doing everything on Zoom and getting their publications out. It was just tremendous.
Oh, absolutely. And, I will say it goes way back. My teacher, a guy who wrote the book on high school journalism, Homer L. Hall, lives down in Tennessee now. But when I worked for the Kirkwood Call in the late 70s and, 76, 77, 77, 78, was the best high school newspaper in the country. And it still is in many ways. It's changed in many ways. But the first newspaper that I worked for, by definition, was probably when I was in middle school, at Nifer Junior High School, and it was called The Beacon. But, the call, I realized and learned what it was, and did I really want to do this? And it was in high school working for the Kirkwood Call that I said, I always knew I wanted to be a reporter, and I knew I wanted to be a newspaper editor, but that made me know that, boy, I really am looking forward to what I'm going to do in the future. I really liked it.
those dreams came true. You're certainly a journalism renaissance guy. You really are.
Well,
and all these different.
To this day, I always tell television and radio to an extent, but I said, like, I'm a kid in a candy store with those because I liked working at a newspaper, and that's what I really, really liked. And I didn't want to be on radio, and I didn't want to be on television. And ultimately, that's how journalism is. You find yourself in these different situations. And but I still like to think of myself as a print journalist. I still see things through a print journalist's eye. I'm dismayed by what has gone on with daily newspapers and just what it took to be a good journalist. Is what you needed to be at a daily newspaper, and now we have a lot of people who call themselves journalists that don't have no idea what they're doing because they never actually worked at a newspaper and never actually had to do a daily newspaper experience. They would be better off if they had. Not hating on them, but it's obvious that things have changed, and maybe about the time that I left the daily newspaper world, and then like about 12 years later, the weekly newspaper world. It's probably a good time as far as I was concerned to get out, because I would have been fighting a losing battle over what's going on now, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to note, and you would remember this, the competition between the print and the broadcast people. It was a loving, but truly alive competition among those folks.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you recall. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think what your comments earlier suggested that. the print mindset. I'm curious with regard, let's start with Donnybrook. When were you all ushered home?
Okay, I think that our first show on Zoom was the first week of April. It may have been the last week of March. We did a show on set. Okay, then we did a show that was on set. We were socially distanced, and there were like 2 camera people. So I want to say 2 weeks after the 17th. So I think it was the first week of April when we went, to Zoom. And it was, I had my Zoom worries because I was concerned about me and my computer, and all this is Zoom, and it's going to be, I just don't know. And after we did one show, I was comfortable with it, and now that we've done, about 3 months or so worth of shows, I'm very comfortable with it. I certainly look forward to being back in the studio, but I think we found a way to really bring the show to people, and people have really, really acknowledged it and really, really like it. Now I don't know what to say about that, maybe, but it has turned out tremendously. And you have to adapt. You have to do what you need to do to get your message out through the program that you're on. I think this worked very, very well. And like I said, I look forward to being in the studio, but I think we've all learned that the format that we're using right now is very viable. And I didn't know that until I started doing it. And that's like one of those things that you find out that I really didn't know until I did it. And then after I did it, then I felt like, oh yeah, this will work.
Yeah, that's a confidence booster that I've heard from explore and experience new technology or technology in another framework, certainly. Of course, the Video 9 network is always accustomed to doing, the best picture, the best sound. And so sometimes that doesn't happen in this setting, but you do the best you can.
Yeah, well, one thing I always said was like, I did theater when I was, younger, and I said like, hey, if something happens, just keep going. They don't know, like they're just looking. So like, just keep going. But yeah, we've been fortunate. Nothing that this was not recently, but I think maybe the 3rd or 4th week we were on, it got a little like cloudy and the wind was blowing, and I'm sitting here, at my computer thinking like, if the power goes out, I've got battery on the computer, but the modem will go out.
Oh, okay, good.
And so I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, and if the modem goes out, then I'm off. So maybe, there's a window to my right. I'm like kind of looking, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think we'll be all right. But it like got dark. It's going to storm, and if I get knocked off, we're in the middle of the show. What's going to happen? But yeah, came through it smoothly.
That's what's happened. If you recall some of the stories, in fact, I witnessed one with one of the weather people having lost power and utilizing the anchor to give the prompts so that the weather person could continue in that live setting. It was remarkable. I loved it.
Oh yeah, teamwork. It works.
Teamwork is a wonderful thing. So speaking of the team, so tell me about the first production meeting you had for Donnybrook. What did that look like?
Well, the day before we actually tried it, okay, we all signed on to Zoom, and we kind of did what we do our production meeting, which we do on Thursday before the show. We kind of did like that on a Wednesday, where we were all there and figuring out, how I need about 3 inches worth of books under my computer, which are there now, to be at the right height, and the settings and all that. And so quite frankly, after that, I felt comfortable enough to do the show the next day. So it wasn't like, 5 minutes before we were supposed to come on our tape on Thursdays that I was still did it. We did that on a Wednesday, and that was when I saw it and the scope of it. And like I say, we did our Brady Bunch, kind of like thing with our different squares, and got used to when you're talking sometimes, just like with the cameras, Anne-Marie Berger, who's the director and executive producer, sometimes you're taking up most of the screen. I usually keep mine where everybody, can be seen, which is fine with me because I don't want to see my big face talking, kind of like people are right now. So I kind of got used to it, and it's easier to do than I thought it would be, only in that I just didn't know what I would be looking at. And, I had a tendency, and people who have done these, okay, I'll tell you, like after one show, I was trained at that time to look at this light in front of me, because you'll see, I found myself looking at myself, or then like looking down, and you can see the different angles, and, that one out. And it took me like a show to get it down to looking at it like, okay, this is how you do that. There's no red light on top of the camera, but the camera's farther away from you. So as you're looking at other people and doing the show and doing whatever you're doing, you don't really even, fixate on that. But this one, I realized, like, if I really want to talk to the audience, look them in the eye, I gotta look at this light that's in front of me.
So for those who don't know, the red light signifies you're on, and it's on, the camera's on you. So, what was it like working? So you're working with your engineer, you're working with your director, producer. Can you explain a little further how much, at the house, or I don't know, where was Berger?
Okay, she would be in like the director's console. All right, and like the director's room. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. She'd be like in the director's room, okay, where she was at. We didn't see her, okay? But when there's the number of minutes that are left on the show, all right, when you're the provocateur, you have an earpiece, okay? Charlie has that. But the camera people also have some little cards, and they can tell you how much time has elapsed in the show. So sometimes, and this happens a lot, sometimes shows go faster than you think they are, and you kind of need that. If I'm not on camera and I see it, I might look and say, like, how much time? And they'll hold up one that says 3 minutes, okay? And I said, like, all right, okay. Now, Charlie, or when I sit, because sometimes I sit in as provocateur when Charlie's not there, you have you have an earplug, and they're telling you how much time is left, okay? We don't have that, obviously, when we're here. We do about 27 and a half minutes exactly. Between looking at this and talking and trying to figure out what the hell it is I'm saying, I have never put down like my phone or whatever with a little, stopwatch with a timer on it. So I kind of don't know how much time is left to go. That's one change. Before the show starts, though, Anne Marie is actually on one of the little boxes with us and just going over stuff for the show. But then we have our, just us when we're having our little production meeting. She comes back on, and then she'll say, like, okay, I'm gonna, she's like in front of her laptop screen. She says, all right, I'm going into the, production booth now, and she'll come back on and say, like, all right, everybody set, and then give us like a 30-second countdown, and then we'll start the show. So we can hear for the most part, and it's other than, like I said, other than the timing of the show, it kind of works out the same way.
Thank you. That was excellent. I love that. I think that will be quite informative for folks who are curious. So now I'm curious about content, especially in the context of COVID-19 and then the death of George Floyd and the aftermath, and our cultural social compass just spinning out of control. What does that do for a production meeting?
Well, one thing is that all right, rules of Donnybrook. Okay, there's got to be a Donnybrook. Okay, so you have to have different opinions on different subjects. So even with all the what's going on, it doesn't need to be a half hour of saying this is good or this is terrible. We try to stick to things that there's some difference of opinion on. Locally, what goes on locally, most of the time it's a local story. Every now and then, obviously with this, the national story is just comes to St. Louis, and it's all part of it. So that's an easy transition. Before George Floyd, it was so much COVID, and it was trying not to rehash the news, which was being reported every day on number of cases and where we're going and things like that. So it was always trying to find, and not just it was COVID related, but we tried to find ways to have things that you had a difference of opinion on, and that kept us maybe a little different than others, because we were just kind of debating things and going back schools and when will they open or things like that. You could talk about that, and is it as soon as possible? Is it not at all? Before all these decisions were made. Of course, now Memorial Day comes and George Floyd is killed by a police officer in Minneapolis, and that dynamic took us in another direction. And luckily, St. Louis is a place, and I think if you tried to do the show other places, for some reason they don't work, but it's not the news wise. Enough happens in St. Louis that even during during protest, COVID, there were still things going on in St. Louis that were locally newsworthy, and we felt obligated and proud to maybe discuss something other than the big two national topics, because things were going on in St. Louis that were worthy of talking about. So we pride ourselves on trying to be local, and even in times where the national story is overwhelming, every town, every city, we still have found a way to keep some local aspects in there. And I thank St. Louis and St. Louis County and our region for always coming up with something new every week. No matter how hard we try to not have anything to talk about, it takes 2 days after one show to have something to talk about.
There is so much news, and that is the issue. Certain formats don't provide for allowing stories, nor and the economic systems too don't allow for the coverage that perhaps localism deserves. I'm glad you underscore localism, how important that is, and it is wonderful that Donnybrook does that. And now you've added that other half hour. It's changed your format for the second half hour of your show.
Yes, and look, I miss your turn. I would look forward to finding a way to get back to the callers. I love the way that we gave our viewers a chance to share with us on what their thoughts was, and then responding to them. At this time, as we're not able to do that, and so we've had a guest on that second half hour each week, and it has been really educational and really enlightening, because no one does it. and to give an individual, but they're getting questions. You don't get to come on for 30 minutes and filibuster. You have to answer the questions of 5 professional and seasoned journalists. And I'll give you some feedback. I think that a few of them, not put it back, but some didn't realize that you're not coming on here to talk about what you're doing or about yourself. You're coming on here to answer questions. And none of these folks really have a lot of expertise at asking questions or answering questions and follow-up questions from the same 5 people maybe over the course of a half hour. A lot of information has to be shared, and it has worked out well because I think we've gotten some things out of some folks that they really didn't realize that they were going to say, but they were very knowledgeable about it. And nobody's any gaffes or anything anybody regretted, but there are really some good conversations. And once a week, I think it was on the weekend, I think all Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, all of them after their Saturday night news had like a half hour where they kind of went over news of the week, things like that. And they're all gone, and we're still here. So there's something to be said for that. And I think that what we do in that second half hour kind of brings back, times when I was growing up where you gave yourself some time to have an in-depth conversation on 2 or 3 subjects, and had the people there that had to answer the questions. This is not a press conference, with prepared statements and take a few questions and leave. This is, you have to answer the questions that are given to you, and you have no idea what it's about to be asked of you. Works out well.
Just like we're doing.
No, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is in real time. It will be shown in real time.
Yeah, and that's, people ask about the show, and I said, like, one thing about it is, even like when we were in the studio, I said, like, so when do you shoot that? And I said, like, we are finished with the first show about an hour before you see it. But it's in real time. We don't have, hey, can I shoot that again or cut or anything like that. What you see is exactly what happened. And, the same with the second show. But even when we did Your Turn, and I tell me with Your Turn is live. That when that comes on at 7:30 and we're taking those calls, you are watching live television. And it's very few other than sporting events, okay, where it's truly live. I mean, the news is live, 5, 6, 10, that's live, but that's a patterned program. And there's, everybody knows what they're going to do. It's been timed out. The script is on the reader, everything is there. With ours, you don't know what the next call is going to be, and you don't know what the next subject is going to be. So it's truly live. It's live television.
Really appreciate the background. I think it reveals. It's the reveal behind that curtain.
Yeah,
I think it's wonderful for people to understand that. So you, as a journalist, your observations, your reflections on what has happened this year so far, and what you see is perhaps the near future and the distant future, Alvin.
Well, okay, and in September the 6th, 6 is a while here, September the 6th, 1960 was when I was born. So this is the year of my 60th birthday, and so 0 year and 60 years after 1960. This has just been, has there been a more tumultuous year? I think, since 1968? I don't think so. And it's almost as though, as I have matured, the daily journalism, days when we had the staffs we had and the resources we had, I feel like we could have addressed all these issues at the same time and done it well. And I feel like just American journalism, other than a few papers, a few stations, are a little hamstrung because of resources. As a result, I think what we're seeing and reading, there's not a lot of breakout journalism. There's just a lot of just reporting what people say and the back and forth. That hasn't helped. I think that it's unique in that you have very different sets of players. For one, who covered the medical profession in depth before this year? And now I think all Americans know more about our healthcare system, how many hospital beds there are in the United States of America or in your region, and how close we are. If this was worse, how there'd be more patients than there were hospital beds. No one knew that. You know, people in America thought that we had 14 hospital beds for every American that was out there, that all of us could take up 2 if we wanted to have a private room. You know, and we found out, we learned things like that. Obviously, we learned that young people see the world maybe a little bit differently. This is the first time that if there is mass street reaction to what people feel is unjust, the number of non-Black people that are out there on the street, we learned that those folks are there. Unique, first time. And then we learned that, you know, life goes on. Your kids got to take classes at home. People had to be furloughed. People had to go through all kind of different things, but we're a strong and vibrant American society, and we can roll with the punches. And I think we had to be reminded that. I think we had to learn that. And the crazy part is, you know what, June 1st or, you know, July 1st, we're only halfway through the year. So we don't know what's going to, you know, happen, transpire the rest of the way. But it's been a truly unique 2020, just one of the oddest. And the fact that there's a presidential election in November makes it even crazier.
Your beliefs with regard to the role of journalism into the future. Do you believe that much of what you were taught and what you practice, are there big changes in that regard from your viewpoint?
Yes and no. I think the whole idea, you know, like, all right, Alvin, you're a reporter coming into your first newspaper. My goal and what I was asked to do was to report well, and do stories and write and, you know, be a part of the community and you know, sources and things like that. But what I need you to do is I need you to report and I need you to write. Well, now they need you to take pictures and do Twitter and be here and be there. And I've never got with that, and I'm still not with that. So that has, you know, obviously changed in how you look at the news. I think that one of the biggest, you know, how I was taught, but what I truly believe is we are there to report the story. We are not there to be a part of the story. You always want to avoid that. And I think we got too many people involved in it now that want to be the story. And you just have to take a back seat to what is going on around you. I think that people who covering, you know, demonstrations and things like that are like they're watching some kind of movie or whatever, and they want to be in the middle of it instead of just outside and reporting on it. I think anything can happen at any time, and I know why you have people there at all hours and all that. But at the same time, that's once again, you know, if you're needed, I think you can be there. Do you have to be there all day, every day, and just be standing around, looking around? I don't think that's necessary. That's kind of making yourself the story once again. Now, I do understand that TV stations obviously want somebody there when something happens, okay? But at the same time, gauge it and figure out how a way to be there and not be there. Let's put it that way. So it's I mean, it's tough. It's like I'm not running a newsroom, and I'm not you know, stand up in front of the camera at this time. And it was really about the time I was just out of it, you know, it like weekly wise that you know, the Michael Brown was killed, and you know, the protests that followed up on that. And I thought to myself, how would I handle this? And I would have probably, the editor that I was, I think I would have handled it a little differently than it was at that time. Because I just, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, a lot of, you know, property damage and violence and things like that. Is that the story? Okay. I would try to find a way to say, like, you know, that's not the story. Let's find what the story is, and then everything else should follow that. It shouldn't be the violence and the demonstration that is the story. But like I say, this was 2014, and now we're at 2020, and I'm just, I guess they got to do what they got to do.
It seems the propositions are much more complicated in terms of the storytelling, how you tell the story. It gets complicated.
No, it's very complicated. And I acknowledge that. And and I'm glad you said it that way, because one of the things that I would get across to kind of everyone involved is people are going to say what they're going to say. And what they say in the comments section, or what they say on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, any of that, okay? Inside of here, we don't care. I don't care, okay? I want a factual story that tells me what happened. And that's all I want. And if I was a publisher of a newspaper or a series of newspapers, I would be one of the first to say, like, we are no longer going to have any comments after any story on anything we put in here. We lasted 200 years without them. Why all of a sudden does this have to happen? And if people think their voices are being stifled, then they can write a letter to the editor, or they can send an email, and then we will post them someplace at a different website. But I think newspapers themselves and radio that covers news, and then television, I think they respond to what people are saying. And that's not our job. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't care what people are saying. Now, if we make an error, it's factually incorrect, and we have to, correct it. That's one thing. But as far as what people say, who cares what people say? We didn't get into it for what people say. We got into it to present stories.
Spoken as you would have spoken on Donnybrook. And I'm certainly happy you still have that artwork behind you for this interview, because I've admired it, but it looks much prettier today than it has, during the show.
Yeah, well, I think it's earlier in the day. Like I said, I have a window right here to my right. And so I think I'm getting a little bit more sun. I do have like a halo light in front of me. But I have to, this piece of art is by an artist named Fred Frazier. Now, one reason I know that, again, is because a lot of the viewers have commented on where did this piece of art come from. So I had told him, we had this professionally framed. And I think that the information on the print, and it's an original, is behind it. It's like I could get behind it, but I'd have to do one of the things on the back and reach in there and get it. Now, I don't know why I had this brilliant idea back in 1989, because that's when we bought the print, and I was at the newspaper in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, the Arkansas Gazette. And my wife and I went to a opening showing for an artist at Pyramid Gallery, which was a new African-American owned frame making and art gallery. So we went to a reception. Now, I have learned that it was their first reception and their first showing, because I called the Pyramid Gallery in Little Rock, Arkansas about a month ago and said, hey, I have an interesting request. My name is Alvin Reid, and my wife and I, lived there. And in 1989, we bought a piece of art there at, Pyramid. Now, I didn't even know Pyramid was open. I looked online to see if there was a Pyramid Art Gallery in Little Rock anymore, and it was. So the nice woman who answered the phone said, send me a picture of it. And so, I was sitting right here, and I stood up, took my phone, and I took a picture, and I put it on an email, and I sent it to her, and not 5 minutes had gone by where she sent me an email back and said, that's a Fred Frazier. That was from the first reception that we ever had here. And he was here, and we had. So I said, yeah, I know he was here because he had some originals, and we bought one. And on top of his painted signature, he signed it himself. So it's got 2 signatures on it. So I found out all this information, and artist Frazier now lives in Dallas, Texas. He's originally from Brooklyn, and he's was beginning to have a name at that time, but now he's quite a famous painter. So if we did something right. We bought a Fred Frazier in 1989.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then the reason I'm sitting here is because, right the week that we were going to go to Zoom was the week that my wife had to do some online meetings. My wife's a special education teacher, St. Louis County, and she works with vision impaired students. And so she actually found this spot on that Monday, okay? And because she had a meeting that, her first meeting was like that morning, and I went out. So I came back in early afternoon, and she was set up right here, and I had, and I was like, hey, this is a good spot. She said, like, yeah, I kind of figured out. I figured I'd try to find a way to put this piece of art in the background. I didn't think it was going to work because my idea was to do it down the basement and have like bookshelves in the background. So I was like, this is cool. So I adopted this spot. I did not come up with this. I have to thank my wife.
Thank her for us too. We are seeing people's personalities through the backgrounds they choose for their these platforms. So that's been an interesting, element to discuss. So thank you though for letting us know about that.
It's like I'm glad I had a nice place to sit.
Yeah. Final parting remarks from you. Anything that you would like to say, Alvin, with regard to this year so far? This is what this series is about.
Well, put it this way. I hope it doesn't get any crazier. Okay. Can we kind of smooth out and fulfill our obligations as Americans and vote and, elect or re-elect a president smoothly and try to transition, not away from what, I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying that just like, can we work together and get through these next 5 months and still be together as a country in some way, shape, or form. Got a long way to go, but obviously I hope that works out. Then one lastly, and this is important for everybody out there, your daily newspaper in, be it New York City, St. Louis, Miami, major city, small town, might be a weekly, but if it comes out every day, 90% of the news that you're going to read over the next 24-hour cycle was first came out in a daily newspaper. So yeah, the news cable stations and the internet and blog sites and this and that, they have a lot to say about a lot of things, but the actual news is broken in a daily or a weekly newspaper. Like I say, if you're in a smaller town, you have a weekly. What went on at that city council meeting or at this hearing or whatever that you don't know about, you're going to read about in the newspaper. Even in a major metropolitan area, most of the stories that you are watching, be it on our local news channels or whatever, the first place that it actually was reported on was in a daily newspaper. So always respect that. And if you could find a way to, pay for the online service or pay for a subscription itself, it is very much worth it because that is where the actual news still comes from.
Alvin Reid, thank you from the St. Louis Press Club.
Well, thank the St. Louis Press Club for having me, and I look forward to joining you guys again soon, okay?
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah. And you, Alvin, thank you.
Thank you.